Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Today we will be doing our first ever book review. So, the book we chose today is a book that Justin's been recommending to me for over a year now, so I finally decided to pick it up. And it's called Be Water, My Friend by Shannon Lee. And if you don't know who Shannon Lee is, that's Bruce Lee's daughter.
Be Water, My Friend, The Teachings of Bruce Lee by Shannon Lee.
Thank you for the correction there. I take it you've read it more than a couple times.
I have. It's one of my favorite books, and I've been reading books for a long time.
Well, I see why you like it so much. I mean, so much of Bruce Lee's philosophy fits into our own philosophy, which is beautiful. I mean, you're starting to see this type of philosophy stem up everywhere, just wrapped up different, and presented different, and different strategies. But man, this book really hit on a couple key themes and even some things that made me stop and have to reflect and be like, man, I need to start approaching life like this.
I've been teaching you to approach life like that.
Yeah, I got to admit the little bit about emptying the cup, which we'll get into later. That bit really hit home in a painful way, a beautifully painful way. But
well, you did. You emptied your cup a lot. We've talked about on this show before how, when I first met you many years ago, probably more like 7 years ago or something, right?
Yeah.
Your cup was full and it was overflowing, and you weren't ready to empty it yet. And then a couple years ago you did, and you surrendered to that process. So I'd say you doing really well with the emptying of the cup. It shouldn't be too painful.
Right. Well, it's so when we talk about emptying the cup, it's all about how you fill yourself up with judgments, ideas, concepts, and how it makes it very hard to handle situations when you're already coming at it from a place of judgment or a place of trying to define things.
Or a place of, I know it all.
Yeah. And so the area I realize I'm struggling with this is when I have situations arise in my life, I'm instantly trying to fix things. I'm instantly trying to understand it to approach it better, which isn't bad. But the minute I try to understand something, I need to catch myself when I'm defining or judging things. And that's something I realize I need to be more present with when situations arise that require me to have a level head.
Right. So tell us about the book and the author, Shannon Lee. She's been popular. She's been in the spotlight for many, many years. I used to watch her when she was on that, what was that fight show she was on? I can't remember, but I used to watch it a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know much about Shannon Lee before this, but Bruce Lee, I've always heard a lot of his quotes, especially Be Like Water. That's always something that's resonated with me, especially when we got into the teachings. Yeah. And it's crazy how these lessons, they transmute over time. I used to think of Be Like Water, just adapt to the situations, which is what it is. But it's adapt your being to situations. And that's something I've never really fully grasped until recently.
Yeah, to kind of understand our vessel changes from day to day sometimes. Sometimes we're a teacup, sometimes we are a 44-ouncer from 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Sometimes we're a raging tide and we just got to let those things go for that ride.
And sometimes we're a shot glass and nothing else can get in there because we're having a bad day. So,
yep. So there's a lot of stuff about adaptability and flow, again, being like water, letting go of the ego, which is something we talk about a bunch. And it's crazy how much work Bruce Lee put into his own development to do that.
Yeah.
How much that was really at the core of so much of his personal philosophy and not just what he taught.
Right.
Then emotional honesty, being able to be honest about your emotions, but not letting them control you. And then stillness and action, which is right in our core values.
Yeah.
Balancing peace with power. And then the process of becoming. Constant self-evaluation and self-honesty to become who you want to be. The more we can get into that honesty, the more we can work with ourselves and become great.
Yeah. I say those are definitely in line with what we do. And I think those 4 or 5 points kind of speak to what the book will teach you, or at least get you thinking about.
Yeah. I know there's a couple key themes from the book, different chapters and concepts in there I wanted to dive more in when it came to this book review, which to start with was emptying the cup, which is the Zen concept: to learn, we must unlearn. which is one of the most, it's exactly why the Dark Night of the Soul is the perfect time to start cultivating shadow work and personal development. It's the hardest time to do it, but in those moments of the Dark Night is when we start to realize the way we have tried to understand life, the way we've tried to define life, no longer works with our reality.
Yeah.
And so we have to unlearn what we have learned in order to cultivate more steady foundations and understandings of how the world works, whether that's people, how you show up in life, whatever. This can apply to anything.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't just martial arts he was teaching. He certainly demonstrated them mostly through martial arts for what most of us was able to see, right? Of course, none of us, well, I did. I couldn't see his day-to-day life. I mean, he passed away when I was really little. But it you know, his intent with his philosophy was to go beyond martial arts and really adapt it to his entire life, which, as far as I know, he did.
Yeah.
He certainly impressed that upon his children. We can't talk to Brandon anymore because he passed away too. But you know, the way Shannon writes this book and the way she speaks about her father, she's very honest. I will tell you, if she doesn't speak ill about her father, but she is very honest, and this philosophy of his really resonated with her, and you could really tell.
Yeah. And I love how she talks about different stages of her life where that philosophy kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing to
Right,
touch on with you're saying about the martial arts and philosophy, we all
right,
know him as a martial artist,
right.
but this really shows how much his life was, as much as all he knew was martial arts, his philosophy was at the heart of his life.
Well, he was an actor. He was a martial artist. He was a dad. He was a husband. He was a friend. You know, he was all these things, and his philosophy definitely touched into every aspect of that. Especially when you hear it from her perspective, she was there for
Yeah.
her whole life. So yeah, it was interesting to see kind of how it touched her life, and like you said, in those different aspects. Because yeah, I mean, she talks about from being a kid to an adolescent to being an adult, and all the things and all the stuff that kind of got in her way and how she overcame those. And so, because remember, she was very young when he passed away too. You know, I think she was what, 4 or 5 or something when he passed away.
Yeah.
And so,
It's crazy how much understanding she had of his life and his struggles.
yeah,
It was beautiful hearing the types of battles he had to fight, not just within the world, but within himself. And that was another big part, is how ego and pride can block growth. You know?
yeah, ego. And so, yeah. And this is where our identity and our rigidity and our attachment to that ego create the suffering. And she elaborates that on his behalf through his writings and through his journals and notes. So,
Yeah.
you know, and really takes us through how he learned how to let go and how that restores that flow and that presence and that harmony. You know, he equates it to water. We call it the force, because you can't flow when you're holding on to everything. Like, you know, like I like to say, when you're holding on to it, especially your ego. And look, he understood that that was his greatest block to true self-expression. It kept getting in his way and getting in her way, and it gets in my way, and it gets in your way sometimes too. So,
Yeah.
and when you're consumed about how things appear, you can't really respond very well to how things are. So, you know, here's a guy who was in a career making movies, so his self-image and all that stuff was really important. It was.
Yeah.
It was literally part of his career. So that he struggled with that a lot. And I mean, you know, that was clear through his, like I said, through his journal writings and stuff that she had recovered. So
Yeah.
ego was really big for him. And you know, he actually expressed that in a lot of his movies and stuff. Some of those storylines where he's like a big tough macho man, and he has to learn through the course of the movie to kind of come back to presence, come back to
Right.
and you know, this reminds me of Bruce Lee. Just think about Bruce Lee. It reminds me of one of our axioms: if you pause to admire your grace when crossing a stream, you will surely slip and fall.
Yeah.
Right? Because this ego interferes, and maybe it's our attachment to this ego, but it interferes again with our presence, and it can make us self-conscious and not very self-aware. And then in this panic, we start to grasp for control of everything rather than just
Yeah.
trusting what's happening in the moment. And letting go doesn't mean you erase yourself. And Bruce Lee learned that. I learned that. I
You
think
know.
you learned that.
You know.
You don't erase yourself. You just move the mask, or at least take it off every once in a while until you work through it.
Well, like one of the stories I love so much, which was his sort of coming to realization about his ego, was
Mm-hmm.
when when he was growing up and he got into martial arts, he wasn't allowed to train at the dojo because he was only half Chinese. And so because of that, he the master at the dojo saw how much he wanted to do it. It was culture that was saying he couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the after hours of the dojo, he would come and train with him and the number one student.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he cultivated his martial arts, even though he was always looked down upon. And then in the Americas, when they were Chinatown, they were doing competitions and they didn't want any outsiders being involved in it. And he started his own dojo, which was, I allow everyone into my dojo.
Yeah, boy, they got him in lots of
It got
trouble.
him into a lot of trouble. And so they ended up saying, look, we will allow you to do this, but you have to challenge our best fighter. And so he accepted that. And he ended up being a lot better than that person, but
Mm-hmm.
the person started running and his ego went full force.
Yeah.
He fought rough and hard, and at the end of the battle, he won, but he felt defeated. And it's
Yeah.
because he realized that that wasn't an honorable bout.
Yeah.
And it made him, and the way he went about it, the way his emotions controlled him in that fight.
Right.
And that was his turning point to getting into philosophy.
It was. It really was. And she writes about that in this book where he came to this point where he realizes the self is always becoming. It's always growing. It's always moving. It's always flowing and fluid. And this perfectly mirrors our philosophy.
Yeah.
We believe and we teach the self is not static. It can be, it shouldn't be. But the true self, if you want to be authentic, you must be in motion even when you're standing still, right?
Yeah.
And the self is not a title, it's not a trauma, it's not a label. It's a force of becoming. And we refine this through our awareness, and we shape this little by little by aligning more and more with these things. And we grow through the teachings and by being humble. And I think he learned this the hard way. And that was a perfect story for that. Because as we believe he believes, this is not a destination. It's a way of traveling. It's a way of walking. It's a way of being.
Well, I think another big thing about this is how the ego, how it's not until we're up in a corner and we're fighting for our lives do all these things we've repressed come to the surface, all these things that we are unaware of that exists inside of us. I know for me, it was during my attachment when I was fighting for my life to make everything work and to survive emotionally through it. All my junk came to the surface and I became Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I realized the hero I always played was just as much the villain in all my stories too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, I think, what triggered for him was he he thought he was not necessarily perfect because he did have somewhat of a philosophical background, but it was more curiosity than lifestyle. And that moment of awareness of I'm not as controlled as I thought I was. I don't know myself as well as I thought I did.
Yeah.
Was that aha moment of I'm not being authentic, which is what you're saying.
Right. Well, and the more you align your spirit and ego, remember, we don't kill the ego here. We don't abandon it. It's still part of us. The more you align your spirit and ego, the more room there is for that flow to move through you. And you find yourself no longer needing to prove anything to anyone. You stop reacting from that wounded pride. You become more available to the moment rather than imprisoned by your past. And, water doesn't hold on to a shape. Once the container's gone, what does it do?
Yeah.
It moves on. It moves on. And so must us. So must we. So must you. I don't know how to say that. So
Sounded right.
one of those three are right. I don't know.
And this comes back to that emptying the cup, which is the most for me, it was one of the most powerful lessons in this.
Yeah.
I'd say it was number 2 for me. And it's that if we can get in touch with our inner selves and look at the reactions our emotions are trying to make us have,
Yeah.
that's when we can empty that cup of those emotions, those judgments, those reactions, and act from a place of authenticity, which really is what creates the best outcomes for everyone. Because when we're not emotionally driven, we're not acting from a place of survival, we're acting from a place of creation.
Yeah. Yes. I'll share a parable with you. You've probably heard this. A student comes to the master eager to learn. He speaks at length about all the stuff he already knows, and the master offers him tea, and the master begins to pour the tea. While the potential student is just blah, 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 I'm so great, I know all this. And he pours and pours and pours and pours until the tea just keeps spilling over the cup, right? It's just spilling onto the table. Stop, the student cries to him. It's overflowing. And the master says to him, exactly. How can I fill your cup if it's already full? It's one of my favorite parables.
That's good.
Because you can't grow if you're attached to always being right.
Exactly.
You can't evolve if you cling to who you were or this illusion, this mask, and you can't hear the force or feel the flow if your mind is too loud and too busy all the time. Only an empty vessel can be filled. You cannot fill a filled vessel. Only a silent heart can hear truth, right?
I like that. Yeah.
There's another axiom that reminds me of the emptying of the cup. Release what you think you know, for fixed ideas and a hardened mind are poison. That axiom fits here.
Yep.
And this is a daily thing, right? We have to empty our cup every day. This has to be a daily practice. You can't just do it once, and because you encounter things all the time that wants to fill your cup, but if it's full, if you don't make room, you can't have it part of you. And this is really a daily thing. You need to be asking yourself, what story am I clinging to today? What part of my past, what trauma, whatever am I clinging to? Or what part of me is resisting what's being asked of me now in the moment? These are the things the mindset you kind of have to be in. Where am I choosing this performance over presence? Because we talked about the mask, the performance, the circus, all this stuff. You need to be present, not performing. And then, as always, Michael, you pause, you breathe, you let it go about your day, right? And you're not going to lose yourself. You're not going to vanish into thin air. You're not going to be erased. You just start to chip away and uncover who you really are beneath all this BS noise all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's like so often, like you said, the labels, the definitions. I mean, we try so hard to know as much as we can so that we don't seem stupid or that we're not ignorant. But in that lies ignorance, because so often, I know this was one of my big issues. I was so rigid to my beliefs and my understandings that I never had room for anything else to come in to help challenge that and make me see things from a higher perspective. And I think so many of us suffer from that.
We do. We do. Well, we also suffer from thinking that ignorance is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if you let it be a teacher, as we say a lot around here.
It's all about humbling yourself, being able to not judge yourself and take an honest moral inventory. It's about being honest with what about you no longer serves you so you can make room for what does.
Yeah, yeah. I empty my cup all the time. Where do you think I found refinement in my teachings on the code? I went to another master and humbled myself and emptied my cup and let him fill it. And the end result was something better than what I had before. Better,
right?
Even though I had been involved in it for 20 years at that point. So,
well, it's like you're one of my favorite quotes you've ever given me, and it's discussion and debate is ripe soil to truly grow wisdom and truth.
Mm-hmm.
If we can humble ourselves to see past our opinions, past our judgments, and really get to the heart of things from a non-biased point of view, we can truly cultivate the strongest understanding and have the most meaningful conversations.
Yeah, yeah. We just had a comment from one of our favorite guests, the Saluna ladies, talking about that, where we provided the space for us to talk and journey together through conversation, and all of us had to open our hearts and be vulnerable and talk about things that most people wouldn't talk about, and nothing was taboo, nothing was forbidden. And I walked away with a filled cup, and I know you did too, and I hope
Yeah.
and it seems like they did too. So that is what we're talking about. That's what we do. And it's, you know, you don't listen, you don't I will say something about emptying the cup. Don't empty your cup for, if you know something's not right, if you know something is against your principles, against the pillars of your beliefs and your philosophy, don't empty your cup for that stuff. Empty your cup for something that can enlighten you and awaken you and create change and growth in you. Save it for those things, because there are people who serve poison and not tea, right?
Yeah.
You just have to kind of be on the lookout for that.
Be discerning.
Very discerning. Trust
So
but verify.
every time.
Every time.
So the second topic I wanted to go over was what we brought up also earlier: be formless and shapeless, the power of water.
Mm.
Which there is so much strength when we're able to change shape and adapt, when we're able to become what we need to in the moment instead of constantly trying to hold rigidly to the masks that we constantly wear. That's the beauty of removing the mask. It allows you to do this, to
Mm.
allow your ego to take shape in a form that is more effective in a given situation.
Yeah. Be formless, shapeless, like water. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
When there's no more powerful force, you look at the drop of a water in a cave, and that drop steadily happening over time is what truly erodes the rock.
And that was a quote from Bruce Lee. Of course, I'm sure you knew that. Everybody, it's
Yep.
probably one of the most famous ones. But don't let that be a metaphor or just a fancy quote or something. Take that quote and let it become a mirror, so that you can have a reflection of your highest self and where you're at in alignment with the universe, with the flow.
And the work you're doing. It's not
Yes.
about these massive changes in life. It's not about winning these lotteries. It's about that consistent small effort you do daily is what slowly erodes away the bad and brings forth the good.
Yeah. Be unbound by fear. Be unchained from your ego. Don't be shaped by the stories the world handed you.
Don't be fixed. Allow yourself to be constantly moving, constantly changing. That is what life is. And the more rigidly we hold on to a past concept of ourselves, the less we're able to evolve into who we need to be.
Yeah, and like you said, don't be fixed. Don't cling to what you've been. What you've been is what you were. Who cares about that? Right? And don't over identify with everything that you think is you, because not everything that you over identify with is you. You're not your pain. You're not this. You're not that. Let go of, Michael, let go of who you're supposed to be,
Yeah.
so that you can become who the universe, the force, God, whoever, whatever is calling you to be. Find your purpose, right? Don't stop worrying about so much what you're supposed to be or this or that. You're not supposed to be anything. You're supposed to simply find your authentic self. And to be
Which is
formless,
constantly changing.
it is. Your vessel changes. Be like water, right? So formlessness is freedom, because even when the vessel disappears, the water still flows. It doesn't ever stop. It might flow off the table. If I spill this right now, it's just going to find gravity and it's going to keep flowing in the direction the universe wants it to flow. This is about choosing the flow over rigidity. It's
Yeah.
about choosing stillness over this bullcrap persona or performance. It's actually about, honestly, at the end of the day, it's about truth over your identity with things. At the end of the day.
Yeah. 100%. You know, I love how you brought up labels earlier. One of the most powerful teachings I had in a class I sat in on was talking about different ailments we have: depression, anxiety, even things like celiac disease. And it's like, don't say, this is, I am depressed. It is, this is my depression. This is something I am going through. It's
Yeah.
taking away from calling yourself the illness,
You
but
are
instead
not that.
saying,
Yes.
yeah, this is my illness
Hmm.
I have for now.
That's
Because the
what.
more we do that, the more it follows us. I know for me, I was depressed my whole childhood because I listened to everyone telling me this. He's suffering from. He has depression illness. He's depressed. He has chronic depression, and it's just all my childhood. I'm depressed. I'm depressed. And
Hmm.
it's when I broke free from that label that I find joy and happiness and no longer feeling depressed.
Right. So this kind of reminds me of one of the bullet points that you said at the beginning of the show, stillness and action, right? I'm going to give you a quote to see if you can guess it. I really throw these on you at the last.
Yeah, you do.
I know, but I have faith in you. Be still like a mountain and flow like a great river. Who do you think said that?
Bruce Lee?
No. Same region, just longer ago. That quote's attributed to Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu. Yes. And look, Bruce Lee understood something that most of us don't. At least not until it's probably too late. Real power doesn't come from force. He understood that. It comes from being still, or, as we like to say, at peace. Right? Not stillness as in doing nothing. Of course, he's a puncher. He's got to punch and kick and hi-ya, right? But he was always still. He was always still. He was always at peace. And this is peace of mind, stillness of our ego, stillness of our fears, stillness, being at peace so we don't overreact. We respond. Stillness is not silence. It's readiness. We talk about being ready a lot, ready for things to come. And we do that through practice, 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 and learning to calm ourselves on the inside, even if there's a cat, whatever, hurricane happening outside. When we think, the way Bruce Lee taught stillness, and stillness is that pause before the strike. Do I need to hit? Do I need to punch? It's that breath before you speak. Should I really say this to this person? Will it really help? Right? It's that space where the force guides us and where that flow exists. This is why we use meditation. This is why we practice our breath work. This is why discipline is essential on our path. Action, the actions you do, the things that you respond to, your responses, all this, your responses, your reactions, your actions basically are mirrors to what's happening inside, right? And every action, every response carries energy. So if you act from fear, you're going to create what? More fear. Yeah, exactly. Those are fear responses. More fear. If you act from your ego alone, you're going to invite resistance all around you because you're not actually being very mindful of what's happening and you're not being very empathetic to what's happening with the people around you.
Right.
But if you act from this place of stillness and this place of what we call peace, right? You generate harmony and you are able to influence people in ways other than just using your fist.
And it can have the most impactful changes. I tell you what, there's so many times I wanted to blow a top, but I found if I just wait a minute and find the words that create connection instead of destruction, it can lead to harmony, not just for myself, but for both parties.
Yeah. And that's our goal. That's our aim. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes we do got to punch people. Sometimes we do. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
We always try to do other things first. So, this idea of being formless, shapeless, that single quote that we all have heard 100 times, it really all the meat. That's the bone all the meat's on, man. It's where it is. You allow yourself to adapt with wisdom, not anxiety, not fear. You let yourself bend without breaking. You move left or right, but your center is still there. It's always centered.
Right.
You speak without needing to control the conversation. You are both the river and the sky, dude. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more we can act from a place of integrity, a place of humility, a place where we don't let these things override us, the more we can allow ourselves to flow into what we need to for the best outcome for the situations and events that go on in our life every day.
And there's lots of events over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You get plenty of plenty of chances to practice and practice and practice and get better and learn.
Yep, and that's what this is all about. Again, none of the things we talk about are flips of a switch. It's all about behaviors that you can start incorporating into your life bit by bit, cultivating these skills, these muscles that you haven't had before. So the next big area I wanted to go over was flow and move. How when we're able
Flow.
to flow with things, God, I know. I love the topic of flow because it's so powerful.
It is.
And I think one of the most important things this book touches on when it comes to flow, when it comes to creative energy and embracing the unknown, is the trust that it'll all work out.
Yeah. This definitely relates us back to presence too. Being present. This isn't about being passive. It's about that powerful presence. You know, Bruce Lee, when he walked into a room, despite no matter what you think of him, whether he was kind of, I know people have said he's fake martial artist and stuff. No, he wasn't. I'll just say that. I'll throw my hat on that side.
Yeah.
But that dude had a presence, and that presence was powerful because he was these things that we're talking about. He flowed and he moved and he was formless and shapeless, and he aligned his ego with his spirit. It's about being centered and responsive, not reacting, responsive, no matter the shape or situation you find yourself in. And there's lots of situations, as I just said, they step up every day. Little things or big things. So this talks about being grounded in who you are, even as your form shifts, or your vessel, as we call it, your changes. And you move with what's real. Instead of always offering all this stupid resistance about what you can't control, you choose conscious adaptation over the rigid reaction.
Yeah. Well, and even when it comes to your dreams, I mean, so often it's like we cultivate this idea of what we want. And one thing I love that Bruce Lee did, and she talks about in the book, is he had a dream. He wanted to get into movies. He wanted to make money to provide for his family doing so. He wanted to live the Hollywood dream, and he wrote a detailed dream down. Now, I know we talk often about how have a goal, don't be attached to the outcomes. But the more specific you can get with that goal, the more you can gear your energy towards what you create to get into that flow. And I think one of the most important parts, and this is one of the areas I struggled with when I first started a lot of my entrepreneurial journeys, is it's like just because things didn't go our way, it doesn't mean we're not in flow. It doesn't mean things didn't happen exactly as they needed to get us closer to those dreams, to learn from those struggles. When he first did, was it Enter the Dragon? I'm trying to think what movie it was. I think it was Enter the Dragon. You know, he got in good with one of the big people in Paramount, and whatever company published
Right, I
that
can't
movie.
remember. It was probably
But
Warner, though. I think it was Warner Brothers.
it might have been Warner Brothers.
Warner, yeah.
And he got in good with the guy, and he was saying, "Hey, here's the script. I saw what you guys wrote. It's garbage. This is what I want you guys to do. This, I promise you, trust in my will, trust in my philosophy, trust in me understanding this topic." And he presented them with a script, and they're like, "Ah, sure, we'll look it over. We'll give you a new script." And the day came, he got the new script and had none of his ideas. And so he didn't show up to set. He had a standoff with them. And it was his resilience.
You're talking about his first, like, this was his big first Hollywood thing, man.
Yeah.
Besides the TV shows and stuff. Yeah, this was a big chance. Yeah. You know, when we talk about flow and movement, when we talk about flow, we're talking about aligning with that flow and surrendering to it. When we talk about movement, we take these measured steps, right? Because when you hurry, you're going to waste time. I know a contradiction there, but paradoxes are all over the place, and both can be true. But we teach that this rigidity, this idea that we can't move or we're stuck, is born from fear, and it clings and it resists and it wants to control you. Yeah. Water doesn't resist the rock; it just moves around it. But it takes a little bit of that rock with it, right? For drop by drop or bit by bit. It doesn't panic at fire. Water's not scared of fire, because even if it gets too hot, it just transforms into a different kind of water. It turns into steam, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't fight gravity. It flows with it. So that's kind of what we want to do. Again, I know, I'm sorry, guys. I say it again and again and again, but we must flow. Flow's important. It's central to what we do.
Well, and it's like when it comes to, I mean, we talk about these things candidly, following your dreams, jumping into the unknown. There is nothing more triggering to our nervous systems, to our beings, our egos, than being cast into something unfamiliar. There's nothing the ego hates more than change and uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And it will flare up when you try to push yourself into these zones. But with resilience, with practice, you can get better and better at it. And the more you do, the more you'll start to see life unfold before you. We talked about synchronicities before. Life will start presenting opportunities and will meet you halfway when you put yourself out there. But you have to put yourself out there first.
Right?
Yeah.
Heather said I looked crazy when I was doing that. I said,
But it gets the point home.
I said, maybe I am crazy. Huh? You never know. But this kind of, I just want to touch on something real quick. And I don't know what kind of people do this, so I'm just going to say people oftentimes equate adaptability or adapting to things as a weakness, or like surrender being a bad thing. It's not, it's wisdom. It's wisdom. Adapting to the changing tide, the changing flow is wisdom. It's not weakness. It's knowing that you can stay your authentic self while becoming what the new moment requires you to be. And that changes all the time. And, we're talking about water today. Water doesn't ask, what should I be? I don't know what to do. It just becomes what it is needed in the moment. Again, it doesn't need to force, and we don't need to force things. It doesn't control. It just goes. We don't need to control. We just need to be present.
Yeah, I mean, think of a time you're in a workplace and you have an employee when you have major changes happen in the workplace and they're fighting it tooth and nail, resisting every little bit of it. And don't get me wrong, I get it. We all love the comfort of what was, but we can't fight the current. And you allow yourself to move with it, to adjust with it. It doesn't mean don't be proactive if there's things that shouldn't be changed, but it also means don't be bent out of place with life changing around you. You see so many people, older people, being bitter nowadays. And you see, I'm sure every generation has seen this because times
Right.
change, our culture changes, our generations change.
Mm-hmm.
And through being so resistant to that change, it cultivates contempt and resentment. It cultivates stagnation because we don't want to adapt to what is new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. You brought up trust earlier. Flow is trust. Flow is both movement and trust. It's about trusting that you'll be fine, that you won't be erased, or that you won't disappear. This goes back to the last line of our student code. Death, yet the force. We die lots of times in our existence. And most of those are like kind of metaphorical deaths, not literal deaths, although we probably do a few of those too. It's about moving with purpose and presence. It's trusting that even when things don't go our way, we'll be fine. We'll be okay. It's that wise surrender of what can be. We don't know what that is, but we surrender to it and we trust. And there's something to be said, and we were talking about our Saluna girls, our Saluna ladies earlier. They teach a lot of movements and energy. Movement keeps energy flowing. That's really important too. For them, it's literally how they practice their philosophy. Their type of yoga requires moving energy and surrendering to that movement and trusting that you'll be fine. And you can speak to this. I'm sure many of you can speak to this too. Really, to break trauma and to get rid of these self-destructive behaviors, you must practice and move in a forward motion. You cannot go backwards.
Yeah. Even if it feels like you are, you can't. The
You're
more you
not.
break
You
these
can't, yeah.
patterns, even though there's harder days that are not, I love it. The labyrinth is the perfect example of this. You move to the center of the labyrinth, then you move right back out to the edge. But you're not all the way to the entryway where you came in. It's a constant movement where we're working through our stuff and getting better each time we're faced with these conflicts. And sometimes we might not be as good as we were the other day. But the more we're faced with these worthy opponents of life, the more often we are gifted the ability to build resilience and grow strength.
Mm-hmm. Are you segueing us into the next one?
Yep, embrace your opponent. Now this was the one. This was number one for me that really hit hard.
Before you do that, let me hit the head.
Yeah, I need to do that too. So you're good. That's
Scratch
old
that.
Ben.
Time out. Time out. Scratch that. Time out.
Baby, the food smells too good. I don't appreciate it.
Hey, I can smell it too, and it smells awesome.
He says he can smell it too. It smells awesome.
You were right, by the way.
House, right?
Huh?
What?
You were right.
What?
Don't like it.
What about your gut? Yeah.
First, it's with a friend. It's like the original.
Okay, that's fucking.
Aren't they so gorgeous? Are you taking my text?
I wanted to show Justin.
Il papa.
Clemente.
Diamante.
Il caro. La gustizia. La gustizia.
Gustizia. La ramita. It's interesting. La forza. Force. I'm gonna have to look them up in Italian and see what.
Death.
Mm-hmm.
Temperance. The Jesus.
The moon is fun. It looks like the lobsters like dancing. I like that they got clubs. They're just like, we're gonna bonk you on the head. I'm gonna make my dinner and get in the bath.
Sounds good, lover.
Juice. You know, it was watermelon juice and some tequila.
Ooh, you dirty bitch.
Just saying.
I'll go get some tequila after this.
I don't want to drink right now.
I know you don't.
I'm saying in the future if we ever wanted to make a Libra margarita.
Why aren't you posting anymore?
What's the thing? Oh, you might have to go into your connect your channels because it looks like it's lost connection with your channel. So go to connect or no, all channels maybe. Oh yeah, all channels up at the top. Settings? Channels. Settings. Channels. Nope, on the side.
I'll mess with it after.
I think this tube sour cream would actually be better for.
It's kind of why I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. You gonna stay out here or here? Come on. Revan needed a break too, I guess.
It happens.
It does.
I got to show you this. Allison's parents, for her birthday, sent her a tarot deck of the original tarot deck.
Wow, that is old school.
Yeah, it's got like all the. They're all photocopies from like the original Italian cards. I'm gonna put this
That
back.
is
on
old
deck,
school. That's old school like me.
It's old school like you.
Yeah, I'm about that.
Almost as old as you.
Almost.
You need to make up your mind, Missy. Cats.
Cats and women. We love them. Can't live without them.
And also.
Never make up their mind.
Nothing. Did I mention how beautiful you look today? Dude, it was so weird. I was sitting here and my computer volume just kept turning down. I was like, oh god, I kept trying to like figure out how to turn it up. Like, what is going on here? Couldn't figure it out, but it stopped, so I'm happy.
That's good.
All right. Ready when you are. Actually, can you have me a paper towel? Thank you, best friend. Oh, you're the best. Oh, it's driving me crazy all episode. Like, got something in there.
Yeah, it's all that pollen everywhere.
Yo. All right. You ready? So the next point I wanted to go over was embrace your opponent, which, God, this one was the number one for me. It hit so hard. And it talks about how when we have opponents in life, whether it's that annoying employee, that toxic relationship, whether it's anyone that is an opponent in our lives, they are the perfect mirrors for us to understand ourselves.
Hug the cactus.
Yeah, God,
yeah.
Dang.
And it's funny you started off with that because you said this one that hit you the hardest. I would argue that this is one of his most profound, but probably most misunderstood teachings. And of course, from our perspective, this is a very deep spiritual principle. And because we have a call to non-resistance, shadow integration, and mastery through awareness, which we'll talk about here a little bit later. Bruce Lee said, you must not oppose force with force. Instead, absorb it, redirect it, understand it, embrace your opponent. And and I talked about this earlier, but this is not just about martial arts. In fact, I believe it has a lot to do more with everything else and less about martial arts. It was about life. It was about the ego and our emotion and our energy and how we manage those and how we use those. And to embrace your opponent really means to stop fighting with what is, right? To stop flinching from being discomforted, or scratch that. To stop flinching from discomfort. To stop shying away from shadow, challenge. To look that moment in the eye and say, I see you. If we got to fight, let's fight, but let's make sure we learn something from each other too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like ask yourself what's coming up when you're in those moments. I love how you said that. the discomfort you feel in certain situations or around certain people. What is it that you're really feeling? Is it really this is a bad person? Or is it that you're feeling shame or fear
Right.
or anger? Or is it your pride?
Yeah. Probably.
You know?
Probably a lot of that, or all of that, or some. Just depends on the day and how full your vessel is, right?
You know?
But if you resist what's coming at you, if you're always trying to hide from it or flinch or hide away from it, you're going to be off balance. You're going to be out of harmony. But if you accept it, and everything's energy, right? This is just this energy coming at you. If you accept that, if you accept the things that you can't change, and you go back to trying to align with it, or at least understand it or learn from it, flow with it, then you're able to redirect it
Yeah.
from a place of stillness or peace.
You empty that cup.
Empty that cup. And listen, you start to win without destroying everything. And I use the word win kind of loosely, but in this idea, the word win, as I'm using it now, just means that you're gaining things. You're actually on the positive side, even though this thing is coming at you, if you don't flinch, if you don't hide. And look, this is in the same way how we combat our greatest opponents. And I'll just give you a few that I think that's been my greatest opponents in my life. Fear, doubt, confusion, disdain, envy, uncontrolled or mismanaged emotions, grief. And that's that grief of loss or grief of change, as you were talking about earlier. You know, people not wanting to change or grow. So, and of course, we teach that these are not enemies to be destroyed. Our opponents are not to be destroyed. They are energies to be understood and transmuted and learned from. So they are our teachers if we let them be.
Exactly. I mean, it's so often, I think back to like how when I dealt with angry people, it would instantly be like, I don't want to deal with you. I don't like you.
Right.
I mean, it's like I realize it's because I had to learn how to feel anger within myself. And that way I wouldn't judge other people for it because we project. These things we repress, we then project.
Mm-hmm. And usually project them on some poor, unsuspecting loved one in our life or someone who just, are. So that's when it gets kind of really crappy because we don't actually direct it at the person that probably deserves it. But we always redirect to someone who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, well, that's especially when it's touching on old trauma.
Yeah.
Someone affronted you when you were a kid, and you get affronted as an adult in the same way. And it's as simple as someone stole your candy bar as a kid, you're devastated. Then someone steals your candy bar as an adult, you blow the hell up on them.
How dare you? How dare you
That was my
disrespect me?
Snickers.
Disrespect me, right? That's a huge one, especially for guys. I don't mean to classify, segregate us here, but guys typically when they're disrespected and it's usually they're not actually been disrespected, they just have this illusion that they've been disrespected, they lose it. So again, these are teachers to be learned from so that we can grow. And what we teach is that this inner conflict is often like a reflection, not an attack. So your opponent may be your own shadow.
Yeah, usually is.
It usually is. So, and again, I will say this probably every episode if I'm allowed to. And by allowed to, I mean if we're talking about this in this arena. You are not your attachment. You are not your wounds, your traumas, your emotions. You are not these things. They are a part of you that needs attention. It's just, remember, we talk about emotions being messengers to us. So trauma, when it comes up, and it usually uses emotions to get our attention, right? Like you said, we get angry, we blow up. These are messengers. These are signals. They are not you. They are a part of you that needs attention. You have to pay attention to it. So again, to embrace our opponents is not to yield in defeat. You're not being defeated. Don't think of it that way. It's not weakness. It is a way to claim your power through your understanding, turning knowledge into wisdom, and defeating ignorance through knowledge and wisdom. This type of work is wise. It's wisdom. It's not weakness. You're not giving up. You're not doing any of these things. You have to learn to start speaking to yourself and speaking about these things with truth.
Yeah. And it's non-judgment as well. I know we say that a lot, but it's learning to embrace these parts of ourselves that we deem unworthy or that we don't like about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's through that dislike that we just perpetuate.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot too. Shadow work for most of us was for me. And I think probably for you too, as you've talked about. The greatest opponent that I've ever faced. The greatest. The toughest.
The biggest bully in my life was myself.
We talk about shadow work, and I just want to end with this. You need to face your triggers with curiosity. You need to let failure teach you, not define who you are. You need to learn to listen to criticism without collapsing into it, right?
Yeah.
You need to hold your ground and defend your boundaries without becoming hardened. We must always remain flexible. To take what comes at us, even from inside, which is where it usually starts, not as a personal attack, but an opportunity to learn. So I taught you that we do not conquer the shadow with force. We integrate it with light, right?
Yep.
So I just wanted to add that little part there because it's really important that people understand that this is not an impossible zero-sum thing. You will come out on top. I promise you, if you do as Bruce told us, to embrace your opponent. So
with diligence and patience.
Lots and lots and lots and lots of patience.
Yeah.
Boy.
So this segues right into the next big topic, which is awareness and liberation. You know, the one big thing he talked about throughout his entirety of his philosophy is self-awareness, as we talk about in the entirety of ours. There is no greater skill you can learn than self-awareness.
And it sucks because once you start to see, you can't unsee.
Yeah. And then it's a constant practice. It's training mentally, emotionally, physically, all to master ourselves.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up mastery because that's what awareness. Without awareness, there is no mastery, right? And without mastery, there is no freedom, the freedom we talk about. And Bruce taught that this type of liberation comes through knowing the self, right?
Yeah.
Knowing the self intimately.
Well, and it's like through knowing yourself. I mean, the more you begin to understand yourself, to be able to look at yourself from an objective or an outside point of view, with no judgments, no nothing, you start to spot the places where there's tension, resistance. When you encounter these moments, like we have talked about throughout this episode, of those worthy opponents, or where there is struggle, or where there is failure. These are moments where when you start to feel that resistance, that tension, you can evaluate what's really coming up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Often when we fail in life, when we mess up or we slip up in life, we end up judging ourselves so harshly when we can look at, why is this such a big thing for me? Why does this upset me? And often there's a pattern of moments in your life, probably your childhood, where there was some form of shame you felt from failing. And again, this isn't about pointing the finger at anyone, our parents or teachers or classmates. It's none of that. It's just being aware of, I felt this before. Where have I felt this, and when did it govern me? When did I create a protector part to keep me safe from feeling this again? Because usually that's what this is protector parts. Kicking in and trying to handle things to help us avoid danger.
Yeah.
When usually there's no danger at all. Don't touch my Snickers.
Don't touch my Snickers. Awareness really is a great liberator. Or it could be the toughest supermax prison that you've ever seen. It's up to you, though. It's always up to you.
Yeah.
And look, everything you seek, whether that be peace, power, presence, purpose, it doesn't matter. You can put any word in there and it all begins in awareness. You know, and we're not talking about just observing things. It's about being present. Again, it's that conscious presence within the moment where everything becomes seen. And really this, it's not just seeing also with our eyes. It's seeing things with our thoughts, our intents, our actions, and we do that by removing the judgment out of what we're seeing, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, what's happening around us. And, you know, awareness and everything kind of comes back to shadow work for us, right? Because that's where you see your shadow, is when you start to become aware. And that's where, like, it's funny because, we talked about on the show we just recorded a few days ago that will be, uploaded soon. But you and I were talking about the stages of progression through the Force, or through learning the Force. And we have 9 of them.
Yeah.
And for some it's 6, and for some it might be 30. I don't know. It just depends, right?
No path is the same.
Someone might get through it, in 3 years, and someone might do it on their deathbed. But I digress. But the awareness is we talk about light being truth, or light being the Force, but the light is also awareness, and that's what reveals your shadow, man. And when you see people progress through some of these trainings, they're fine until they start to be made aware. And then they're like, oh my God, what is happening? It reveals this stuff. But it doesn't reveal it to shame you or to even shame it, but to begin your journey through it. So, but when you can become aware, this ultimate awareness of your thoughts, you can change them, right? When
Yeah.
you become aware of your emotions, well, now you can start working with them and driving them, using them to your advantage instead of the other way around. When you become aware of your conditioning and the things around you and the stuff you had no choice in, well, you can start over and start to rewrite a new story, your own script. So,
Yeah.
again, it is the great liberator. Awareness is, but it can also be a prison, and that is up to you and me and everyone. So,
Well, it ties into one of the most important skills, which we mentioned probably every episode: presence.
yep.
The more present we can be. Bruce Lee taught about how even though he had a grand master plan of what he wanted to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
he lived moment by moment. And the more we can do that, the less we can try to just plan for every outcome and for the 30 steps ahead of ourselves, and instead take the step that's right in front of us. That's motion, that's movement. Not writing on the map, not drawing the to-do list. It is the steps we take in the present moment towards our greatest good and our greatest dream.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And it's not about finding that one moment of enlightenment. Enlightenment and awakening, even through his philosophy, is found breath by breath,
Yeah.
word by word, thought by thought, step by step. And it's in that humble and quiet discipline. And he was all about discipline, of choosing that presence over ego, and clarity over chaos, and alignment over ambition. Although he was a very ambitious man,
Yeah.
he really was. But I don't think towards the end, and this is my opinion, that he was overly ambitious, because he balanced it with all this other stuff. So,
And one of the things that's out there, one of the things he does teach, which is sort of a paradigm to this, we must be masters of preparation, but never controlled by expectations.
be ready.
Yeah.
Be ready. And we talk about that a lot. Be ready.
Luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
That's right. So I thought of 3 axioms when we were talking about awareness, and how it relates back to his philosophy, and where our teachings meet as well. And the first one is, without truth, there is no trust. The truth has no regard for popularity,
No.
and perception is reality. You are not your fear, you're not your anger, you're not your past, you're not your mask, yada yada, blah blah blah. The moment you see clearly, we're talking about awareness, the illusion begins to fall away. This is why our path doesn't promise salvation. It promises awakening. And awakening is liberation, if you will let it be.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way, the identities we have, the way we are, when we can liberate ourselves from the stories we tell ourselves, from the beliefs, the identities, when we can get rid of all of that and just be, without description, without definition, without being fixed,
Yeah.
we can allow ourselves to fully be and exist in this moment and to whatever we become.
Mm-hmm. Yes. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, I got to admit, this book really hit home on a lot of ways and really just aligned so much with the path. It is a great take on philosophy through the eyes of someone who we all know, and through a not so common lens as far as the way it's portrayed. Again, the path we teach, the path a lot of people you see out there, They're all the same type of messages, but it's all about which one resonates with you. And what made this book so powerful is it was a whole different perspective than the normal self-help books or philosophical practices, spiritual groups, etc. It was a raw experience from someone who took charge of his dreams and made them a reality. One of the last things I wanted to end this with was some of my favorite quotes from the book. And I'm sure you probably have a couple as well. I know we've been spitting them out as we've been going through this.
Yeah, I tried not to steal any of yours. I don't think I did, but those were I've shared my favorite ones. Go ahead and share yours.
The enemy is not what's in front of you, it's what's inside of you.
Mm.
Water never tries to be anything other than what it is. It simply is. That is its power. To choose to be water is to choose to keep moving, even when the movement is small or subtle or difficult.
Drop by drop, if you have
Drop by drop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do.
There's an axiom for that.
Yeah.
Wisdom not used is wisdom wasted, right?
Yep. Flow in the living moment. We are always in a process of becoming, and nothing is fixed.
Not for long, anyway.
Yep.
You can go ahead and resist this. You can resist for a time, but that water gonna chip away and chip away and chip away, and you're gonna go kicking and screaming whether you want to or not.
Yep.
Right.
You must be shapeless, formless, like water. When you pour water in a cup, it becomes the cup. Which I know we've referenced that one a couple times.
Yeah, I think it's probably his most famous one because he said that during an interview where the guy was like badgering him about being the king of martial arts, and he's just trying to have a conversation with this guy, and then that's when he said that. It's very profound.
Man, it's crazy. I knew he was philosophical, but I didn't realize how deep his philosophy went, especially for its time.
Yeah. He was around in an interesting time, taken from us far too soon.
Thank you for joining us today. Let us know how you liked the book review. If you have any comments or parts of the book that you enjoyed that we didn't go over, please leave it in the comments. And again, thank you for being a part of this family and joining us. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.